to Orinda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. I'm your host Orinda, and today we're talking about Pokémon with Jacco Heerdt. Pokémon is a series of video games developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo and the Pokémon Company under the Pokémon Media franchise. I don't really have much with Pokémon, but perhaps talking with Jacco, I will get an insight why people actually like it. Our guest today is Jacco. Hello Jacco, and thank you for joining me.
Hello. You're welcome.
Great, I saw that you were on a holiday. How was your holiday?
My holiday was really nice. I went to Italy together with my girlfriend, who is Italian. So we went to visit her family in Rome. We went there for 25 days, and we had a lot of fun, mostly on the beach.
Oh, that's nice. So we're going to talk about Pokemon today. I must say I am not really into Pokemon, so can you tell me in your own words what Pokemon is?
Well, Pokemon is pretty big. You could say it started off with a game, which is an adventure game where you collect creatures that you then train to become stronger, that you can use in battles to fight different gym leaders, to eventually gain the status to go to the Elite Four, which are the four strongest trainers of the region. That after you've defeated them, you challenge the champion, and if you beat him, you become the champion. That's in a nutshell basically what it's about. But that's the mainline games. Beyond that, Pokemon is way bigger. It came back in a lot of media, such as the anime, manga, a lot of toys, Pokemon cards. So Pokemon beyond the game became really big.
Yeah, and of course I think there was a pretty big hype, and maybe it still is, about Pokemon Go.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell me something more about that?
I remember when they first announced the game, and they showed this trailer of a guy walking on the street, getting a notification about a Pokemon popping up, and we saw this trailer where Pokemon would jump up in the real world, and you could see it from your phone. It looked really epic, and I remember that. I mean, of course, everyone was hyped about it, but I remembered that here in the Netherlands it released later, because it first released in Australia and in New Zealand, I think, and so everyone was making these accounts, like app store accounts for Australia or New Zealand, me as well. So on the first day it was actually available in the world, so to say, I also started to play.
Okay. So, did you find a lot of friends who play Pokemon?
Oh yeah. You mean Pokemon Go or Pokemon in general?
Oh, in general.
In general, yeah. I'm in the cosplay community. I think a big percentage of that is also really into Pokemon or in Pokemon Go in general. And yeah, so along the way, I got friends who also play Pokemon, and also my girlfriend, she also likes to play Pokemon. So
Um, can you tell me something about the different kind of Pokemon?
you mean the types of the creatures?
Both of them, I guess.
All right. I think that's best to answer with creatures, because Pokemon are, like, most of them are based on real life animals or mythical creatures. Some Pokemon are even based on items. So yeah, there's a lot of different. I think. Oh wait, I want to look it up. I think there are like more than 900 Pokemon at the moment. Let's see, Pokemon Pokédex. So if I go to the official Pokemon page, and I'll do the highest number first. Okay. Oh, I said for sure 900. Well, there are 898 Pokemon at this moment.
Okay.
Yeah, and but I remember when I was little, there were only 150, and that was it. And then we got Mew, and we were like, oh wow, it's a new Pokemon. And then we got the second generation, and for the first time we saw I remember Meryl and Schnubble and Togepi actually, and we were like, oh wow, what are all these extra Pokemon? And now we're at, well, 898 apparently.
So is there? I know Pikachu is one of the famous one. Is there another Pokemon who is very famous and that people like to cosplay or like to play with?
Yeah, yeah, Pikachu is the mascot of the series. So of course, when you say Pokemon, you automatically say Pikachu. But there are some Pokemon next to Pikachu that are also like really big and well known. One, of course, is Eevee. Since a few years, Eevee also became like one of the mascots of Pokemon, like more got a bit more in the spotlight. Besides Eevee, I think for sure Charizard is a real fan favorite. Everyone always says, when I was a kid, my favorite Pokemon was Charizard, and of course Mewtwo, which is the first legendary Pokemon, and a lot of people have like big memories from that. So I'm pretty sure, especially in mainstream media and stuff, you will mostly see those Pokemon. And of course, the original starters: Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle.
And do you think what is more popular? What people play? I mean, is the game more popular or the TV series or?
Oh, in terms of media, that's a rather good question, actually. I would say I think that depends on the age. I think most, like, let's say kids. I think for kids maybe the TV show is more popular because it's easier to access. You don't need a Nintendo Switch to play it. Even though nowadays you have Pokemon Go. Yeah, I think now that I think of it, Pokemon Go for sure is maybe the biggest medium for Pokemon, and that is reflected also by the fact that in 2019 a game called Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee released, which was a remake of the original Pokemon game, but with some elements of Pokemon Go. Even though you didn't have to go out, but the way you catch Pokemon was very inspired by Pokemon Go. So you can see that on that popularity of Pokemon Go, the Pokemon Company themselves are also benefiting from that. So
Yeah.
it's a really good question, but I'm pretty sure that's Pokemon Go.
Yeah, okay. Why do you think Pokemon is so addicted or so popular by people?
Well, that's because um, it's so easy to find a creature or a bunch of creatures that you like. So there's a certain if you're looking for cute creatures, it's there. If you're looking for cool creatures, it's there. If you're looking for powerful creatures, it's there. So there's all these different kind of creatures that you can, let's say, collect. So one of the big things in Pokemon is to collect all the Pokemon, complete the Pokédex, which is basically the encyclopedia or digital encyclopedia for Pokemon. And the collecting aspect of Pokemon is something that's basically been in all the games. So in Pokemon Go, it's also in the mainstream in the main series Pokemon games, always about collecting Pokemon. And I think that's something that can be very addictive, like collecting, for example, post stamps or coins or any other collection that's out there, or Funko Pops. I mean, you could name them all. But that's the same with Pokemon. It's the addiction of collecting, and then also like as soon as you have it, it has a certain value because you can train it, make it stronger, and then use it to battle.
What about the? Because I also know I see a lot of them. It's about the Pokemon cards. Is that some same?
Yeah, the
Uh,
the of course the aspect of collection also comes back in the Pokemon cards. So there you can see like it's basically like almost everything inside Pokemon is about collecting. Maybe the anime not so much because what's there to collect you can just watch. But what is fun about the new series in the anime, so every time when there's a new mainline game, they introduce a new anime, so to say. Like, of course, it continues with Ash and Pikachu, and all everything that happened before is still canon. But they always like it's like they reboot the story. And this time, Ash is traveling together with Go, and his name already kind of suggests it. he want to catch all the Pokemon that are out there. So again, it's about collecting.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's definitely in the Pokemon trading card game the same thing. You can collect cards, let's say of the series, and then when you have the right card that you're looking for, a rare card, it's probably also very strong. So with the game, with the trading cards, you can also play, of course, the trading card game. And if you have the right cards, you have very strong cards. Yeah. So again, then it's also about battling.
If you watch the anime, isn't there? Yeah, you said it's just watching, but I think it's also uh, can be inspiring for not only for kids but also the people who play the games, and but also of how they can do it in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. I mean, because of course, like almost all the seasons of the anime are based on the events that also happen in the games. Um, so yeah, it's of course it inspires you to also play the games and then to collect, I suppose. But in most of the scenarios in the anime don't have that much to do with the game. Of course, the Pokemon and the locations are mostly the same, but yeah, it's not like, oh, Ash, like for example, because Ash in the anime, like he uses, for example, Pikachu against a rock type Pokemon. That's something you would never do in the game because it doesn't make sense, because
Hmm.
it doesn't do any attacks. No electric attacks are not effective on rock type Pokemon. But yeah, then Ash is like, oh, I just electrocute the sprinkler system, and the sprinklers will go off, and then the water will touch the rock Pokemon, and oh. But that's something you can't do in the anime or in the games.
Is there any storyline when you play Pokemon, or is it just? Is there any storyline?
Yeah, there is a storyline in the games. It's it depends. I mean, especially in the earlier games, it was always kind of the same. Like, you go on an adventure to collect the Pokemon for the Pokédex. You become stronger. You fight the gyms, and in the meantime, there's an evil organization that wants to um, um, either destroy the world or use Pokemon for benefit, or turn all the seas into land or all the land into seas, blah 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 blah. So there's always an evil organization, and there's always like the gym challenge. But the newer Pokemon games, I feel they have a bit more story in it, especially since Generation 3 and 4, where it's a bit different. But especially the first two games, they're story-wise basically the same. It's like nothing that much special that's happening.
Okay, so and basically you need to make your own storyline.
See it as you're going on an adventure, and you're, yeah, doing your own legacy. That's in the first two games especially. Still, they're very good games, but the story aspect becomes bigger in the newer games. And I can see that the newer the game, the more in depth they kind of want to go into the story. For example,
Hmm.
Sword and Shield has what I think a really good story, because it doesn't really involve an evil organization. There is no evil organization whatsoever. Or well, not really an evil, not like typical, like people dressed as thugs and that want to steal your Pokemon. Like, that's something that before that was like basically in every Pokemon game. And in Sword and Shield you don't see that. Instead, they make other stories, and there are a few storylines that are going on, and then later like all come together, kinda. So was a bit more interesting story wise, is what I think.
Okay. You already talked a little bit about evil versus good. Tell me, in how much evil or bad guys are there to fight?
Well, in almost except for Sword and Shield, there is always an evil organization. Um, I mean, let's say, yeah, in Sword and Shield also, there's always a secret organization. So in the first two games was Team Rocket. In the third game, it was Team Magma and Team, oh boy, Team Agua and Team Magma. And in the fourth game, it was Team Galactic. Then you had Team Plasma, and then you had Team something with, it was something with red. And then in Sun and Moon, you had Team Skull, and now there is another organization that that's kind of evil, but less than the other ones. So yeah, there's always indeed an evil organization or indeed the bad guys that you have to defeat. But in some Pokemon games, especially in Sword and Shield, there's like a twist at the end. You're like, ah, so that's pretty cool.
And how many games do we talk about? How many versions of Pokemon is there?
At the moment, because in Pokemon, let's say you have the main games, which are the standard adventure games, collecting Pokemon, battling, training. There are eight generations of games. Um, yeah, so Sword and Shield is the eighth generation,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, yeah, so let's say there are eight different games, but almost from every game, right up until the fourth generation game, there are remakes also. From the original story, there's now even two remakes.
Okay.
And so there are a lot of different games. And the last few years, they're also like coming up with a lot of different games besides the main games.
Why do you think they make so much of a remake of the original games?
Because a big part of the community are people like me who play Pokemon also for nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
So but of course, like eventually the games, like the newer games, they have like things that older games didn't have, or some things work a bit easier, graphics get better, like all these kind of stuff. So it's nice to get back into that nostalgia, play that story you played before, see the routes, the music, the characters, like that bring up nostalgia, but play it in a new way. For example, what I really liked about Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee is that you play that region, or you basically play that story that you've played countless of times, but in a new way and with new graphics, which really makes it refreshing and nostalgic at the same time. So I think that's really why they do it, because they know that us adults who now have, let's say, the money to spend on all this nostalgic stuff, they know that we are emotional enough for Pokemon to buy these things.
Do you think there is a big change between Pokemon in the first stadium and, let's say, Pokemon the new stadium?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yes and no. The core of the game has always stayed the same, and also when I look at merchandising now and the feel of the brand, so to say, it feels the same as 20 years ago, or actually 30 years ago, basically, when it, no, not 30 years ago yet, 25 years ago it started, and it still feels the same in terms of branding. The logo is still the same. The You still see the same creatures. It's not that like they reboot the series and the old creatures, they're not there anymore. They're only in the old games. No, still when you come into the newest game, which is now Sword and Shield, you will still find a Pikachu. You will still find an Eevee. You will still find those creatures that you would find in the game 25 years ago. And that's really cool. That yes, it did evolve, and yes, the graphics became better, and maybe it became even. No, I wouldn't even say bigger, because I remember in the 90s, it was already really big. So yeah, it did change, it evolved, it became a bit more modern, especially the games, of course. But in terms of brand, I think it stayed the same. It still has the same feeling.
Yeah, I think that what I notice is that people who played it when they were young and the youth of today's. Oh God, now I'm feeling old.
Those kids.
I think it's just because I'm not that involved with it, but I can imagine kids. It's very open for youth and kids as well, and that's why you can be a Pokemon lover of from between 6 and what is it, 75 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's the whole concept of Pokemon, because it is, of course, the trope we find good face bad, but also the cute creatures, etc. To it's all there, and it's very, like I say, easy played and easy to understand Pokemon, I guess.
Yeah. And the cool thing about it is there's so much media of Pokemon that you don't even need to play the game or need you don't need to play the games to like Pokemon. And for example, what I have with some other franchises that I'm like, okay, you need to watch the show, or you need to play the games, or you need to watch the books, or read the books in order to be able to like that fandom. With Pokemon, it's not like that. You can just say, yeah, I just like how that creature looked on that shirt, and that's why I like the shirt. Or you can say, yeah, I like to watch the anime, but I'm not a gamer, so I don't play the game. Or you can say, yeah, I just like to collect the cards, and that's it. That's all cool. There's so many ways that you can enjoy the brand without having to say like, yeah, you need to play the game to understand it, because Pokemon, yeah, it is what it is. Like you can play. So I've had people who said, yeah, I'm really into Pokemon. I never play, although I never really play the games. I only play Pokemon Go, and that's totally cool. Where in some other fandoms, people would maybe at that point say like, oh, but then you're not a real fan.
That's
Like,
stupid.
okay.
I must say that's stupid. When I go to conventions, I hear some people saying that too, and I think that's completely stupid, because you can be a fan how much you want to, and uh, for example, I'm gonna take Star Trek. If you, for example, don't watch the Abrams movies, or just don't see one of the series, then you are not a real fan. That it's so stupid to say.
It's also, it doesn't make sense because being a fan comes from the word fanatic, which means
Hmm.
if you're fanatic about something, you're a fan. And that can be in all kind of media. Of course, if let's say you would say, I love Doctor Who, but I don't watch the show, I only read the comics. Of course, I would be kind of like, okay. But on the other hand, well, it is possible, and if that makes you a fan, then cool, no worries. But yeah, but with Pokemon, even though Pokemon has like also a main thing, which are the main games, because everything is surrounded around that. So the new Pokemon cards, every time a new Pokemon cards come out, it is based on a new generation of games. New anime always based around new generation of games. So the games, of course, are leading in where the brand is going, but you don't need to play the games in order to understand the brand, and yeah, that's really cool. And I think that's also why Pokemon at this moment is the biggest gaming franchise in the world.
What I was wondering, is Pokemon in, for example, like Asia, totally different than here in Europe and, for example, the United States?
I would say even bigger in Asia. From because of course, like in Japan, where Pokemon comes from, it's like it's almost like a national heritage there. They have planes, they have trains, they have Pokemon centers, which are just Pokemon oriented stores. Like here in the Netherlands, we have 90 stores. There they have Pokemon stores. So in that way, the medium of Pokemon is even bigger there. But yeah, the way they consume the media is, I think, more or less the same as here. Um, yeah, I think. I mean, I haven't been to Japan, so. All I can base it off on is things I've seen online, and from what I've seen online, it's bigger there.
Yeah, I noticed that too. But that's always. I think it's typical Japan, and I don't know if you have watched the opening of the Olympic Games in Tokyo past month.
No, I haven't, but I heard there was a big Pokemon segment.
It was not only Pokemon, but it is. They let all the athletes coming in on video games music. And that is so totally Japan. Also the Japan I know. And that was so funny. And because my fiance is play, for example, Final Fantasy, and he was playing, and then he hear it on TV, and he was saying, "Huh? What's Final Fantasy doing on TV?" I said, "No, it's the opening of the Olympic Games, and it's just Japan who also are crazy about those things like Pokemon and anime, and of course it's coming from there, but it's so big. I know it's big, and that's one of the reasons I really like to visit Japan as well, of course. But it's Japan.
I think that also maybe from what I've understood, it has to do that they're about these things less judgmental than here in Western countries. Because here in, for example, here in the Netherlands, if you would say to someone, "Yeah, I like Pokemon," like, "Yeah, okay, I'm a grown man, but I really like Pokemon," then people
We'll laugh you
most
out.
people will look at you like a bit like, okay. While in Japan, they're like, "Yeah, okay." If you say, "Yeah, I like Pokemon," they're like, "Yeah, so what? Everyone does. No big deal." you know. So yeah,
But
I mean, I think.
well, I think that they like countries like Japan and China. And now I'm going to talk a little bit fake maybe for you guys, but let me say, I think they have a more understanding of your inner child, and being fan of Pokemon or, for example, Transformers, etc. It's not only a geeky thing, but it is also you bringing your inner child out and say, okay, of course I'm a grown up, but there's still a little child in me that still can play and be innocent and not so prejudiced about children's play or children's things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any? Well, if you are playing the games, for example, can you choose from different characters what you like to play, or do they have some kind of a main character like Ash, or maybe two or three other characters where you can choose from, and from there you play the game?
That depends on which generation game. Since generation 6, yeah, since generation 6, you can basically create your own character to a certain height. So at first you're given, I think, first you're given the option: are you a boy or are you a girl? And then you can choose between, I think, 6 characters that are based, but the faces are all more or less the same, but the difference is skin color and hair color and eye color, which then later you can change. But this is since generation 6, and now in Sword and Shield you can still do that. There are, in every little or big city, there are like boutiques where you can buy some clothes and change your outfit. And before generation 6, this was not possible, so you just chose boy or girl, and that's it. you give it your name, and then you go on.
Does that mean also that the later versions are more like an RPG game?
But technically, they are all RPG, because there are elements of experience, leveling, becoming stronger, making the right choices to grow. But instead of it doing when you do it yourself, it's more like about the Pokemon. So you are still playing the role of a Pokemon trainer, but yeah, the customization of your character became bigger. But you always, ever since the first game, you always give it your own name, and you also name your rival in most of the older games. In the newer games, your rival has its own name.
So how do I need to see you as a character in being a trainer?
Yeah, that depends on the game. So before Generation 6, you would choose boy or girl. You would get then if you choose boy, you get the boy trainer, and if you chose girl, you get a girl trainer. And then they say, okay, and what's your name? And then you have to type your name, and that's your character. But in every generation, the trainer always looks different. It's a different looking character.
So what do you like the most of Pokemon?
Personally, I like the collecting aspect the most. So I do collect Pokemon cards a bit. I play the games, and in the games, I always like to collect the Pokemon. So I always try to catch as much as I can, and I like to collect shiny Pokemon. And shiny Pokemon are Pokemon which have an alternate color scheme. So they are just as strong as the normal Pokemon. They don't do anything special, but they are very rare and they have a different color. So,
Okay.
for example, where Pikachu normally is yellow, the shiny variant of Pikachu is more orange.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and that's a very small change, but there are also Pokemon which change drastically, like like Charizard. Charizard's very good. So Charizard normally is orange, but a shiny Charizard is black.
So how many different kind of types uh, do you have of one Pokemon, for example?
Um, well, that's that yeah. Well, you have of course the shiny, which is one different type, and then you also have the some Pokemon have like female, like male or female. They look different. For example, Pikachu's tail for a male is just a straight line at the edge, and for female Pikachu, it's more shaped like a heart. The tail at the end, um, which if you don't know, you won't notice. But if you know, you're like, oh, no, I see it. Um, and then there's also Pokemon like, for example, Unown, which is shaped like a letter. But for that Pokemon, there are for every letters there are different shapes of the Pokemon, and those are called forms. Um, but those you have for not that much Pokemon. You have Unown, you have Spinda. Spinda is a Pokemon that has like all these dots and yeah, like a pattern on his body, and there are, well, infinite. They say infinite, but I believe it's like 700 something different kind of variations of Spinda. It's really a lot, which is technically impossible to get them all. Um, and yeah, there are some more Pokemon that have different alterations, like different forms. So yeah.
And do you have any favorite characters or Pokemon?
Oh yeah, my favorite Pokemon is Shinx, which is a Pokemon from the fourth generation.
Okay, can you could describe it? How it
It's
looks?
um it's an electric cat, so I love cats.
Ah,
Yeah, I love cats, and the reason why so basically when I was younger, when I was little, I of course played Pokemon. I played the first two generations. I really grew up with the first two generations. Um, so um, so yeah, and then I stopped a bit with Pokemon, and I don't know. I mean, I was still interested in it, but not as much as before. And then I got somehow back into it. My girlfriend at that time, she had a Nintendo DS, and
hmm.
she had this R4 card, and the R4 card is like a, well, this card that you can basically download and install games to, which is not legal. But yeah, I mean, I was young, I had no money, so I was like, okay, cool. So I downloaded Pokemon Diamond, which is the fourth generation of Pokemon. And I was like, oh, let's see what this is about. And before that, I did play Pokemon Ruby, which is the third generation of Pokemon, but I didn't really like it at the time. So like, okay, let's see if Pokemon Diamond's any good. And I fell in love with that game. And with that game, my love for Pokemon came back. And this was, I think, 2009 or 2010. And at that time, Pokemon Heart Gold and Pokemon Soul Silver just released, which are remakes of the second generation Pokemon. So I played Pokemon Diamond, fell in love with it. I found Shinx. I was like, oh, this Pokemon is so cute. It's a cat, it's electric, and when it levels up and it evolves, it becomes this huge badass cat, which is also cool, but not cute, but still. And yeah, so that's where Shinx came from. And then I also got Pokemon Heart Gold, which is a remake of Pokemon Gold, which I really loved. And that's where my love for Pokemon exploded. And ever since then, I devoted myself to buy every Pokemon game and play all the Pokemon games and everything.
So, how addicted were you when Pokemon Go came out? Cause I remember when Pokemon Go came out, and even months before that, it was already a hype. And when it came out, it was so a hype that it was ridiculous to walk over street because 90% of the people were playing Pokemon Go.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember the first days of Pokemon Go. Like I said earlier, I got it through the I think Australian App Store. So I'm an Apple user, so I had to make an Australian Apple account. Then go on the Australian App Store, download it, then switch back to my Dutch Apple account, and then I could play it. So I had to go through all these steps, which took me more or less an hour. And then I remember that it started up, and I was like already hooked. I was like, okay, this is cool. So I remember that after that, my mom was like, we're gonna go to the supermarket, come. And I was like, geez, but I want to play this. But I was like, okay, cool. So I took my phone, of course, and when we went to the supermarket, I was like checking around what there was, and I was like, okay, this is cool. So so yeah, and in this period, there was still the system that you could see which Pokemon were nearby and which way you had to go to get that to that Pokemon. And I remember, like for example, seeing a Bulbasaur being nearby, and I got crazy over it. It was like, oh, geez, a Bulbasaur, that's a starter. I don't even have that yet. Whoa, because I chose Charmander as my starter. Which later I found out you could also choose Pikachu as your starter. But yeah, anyway. So okay, so I chose Charmander as my starter. Then I saw Bulbasaur. I got crazy over it. I was like, oh man, I want it. And everyone was playing it like that. People were running literally to go to a Pokemon that they didn't get before. I saw videos of people in Amsterdam. There's a huge park called Vondelpark, which it's a very big park, and that's like a hotspot for Pokemon. So I remember on the news, actually on the news, seeing videos of people running because there's a Dragonite, and I'm like, wow. And I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, shit, I would also do that. And now that I think of it, I'm like, I mean, a Dragonite. I mean, I've got like three of them. I mean, whatever. So yeah, I was really addicted to the game. I remember that I was working in Burger King still, and if I would have like the evening shift, then I would during the day play Pokemon Go all day, then go home to change, and then go to work. Those were the days. So yeah, that I was that much evolved into Pokemon Go. And the funny thing is, I never really stopped playing. I mean, the frequency of playing it that changed. So I don't go out every day anymore to play it. But when I'm home, I start it up, check what Pokemon are here. Or like today before I went here in the city center to the shopping area, and then I always check Pokemon, check Pokemon Go. Like, let's see which Pokemon are here. But that's more because I'm looking for shiny Pokemon. So for the Pokemon with a different color, which are very rare. So yeah, that's how I play it now.
And what is the latest news about Pokemon?
The latest news is that they're working on two new games. One is gonna come out this November, which is Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl, which are the remakes of the fourth generation of Pokemon. So you can imagine how much hyped I am and how much I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're making another game which is called Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is going to be awesome. It's a completely different kind of Pokemon game because Pokemon was always like you have like Route 1, Route 2, Route 3, and so on, and you would follow the routes with a static camera from one side. So in the old Pokemon games would always be that you see it like from up, kinda. And in the newer Pokemon games, the camera would be on like a static place and would move like kind of around the player, but it wasn't like you could control the camera or something. In
Okay.
Pokemon Sword and Shield, they added the wild area where actually you could walk around freely and control the camera. But now this game, do you play Legend of Zelda?
No, but I'm looking for a fantasy game for a long time, and there were a lot of people who were saying you try play Zelda, but I haven't played yet. So
All right. Well, the new Pokemon game that's gonna come out, the way it looks like, the way I feel that the gameplay is like Pokemon, but kind of mixed with the Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. So it's a very open world. You can walk around freely. It's not like go from point A to point B with like one singular road that you have to follow with a static camera. No, it's actually you have to explore, you have to look around, you have to find stuff, and it looks more like a open world RPG rather than the fixed path RPG that Pokemon always used to be. So I'm really looking forward to that. That should come out next year, and yeah, so that's the latest news regarding Pokemon.
what would you advise if someone is new to Pokemon and say, okay, I like to start playing the games? What is your advice? Which game is best to start with?
Sword and Shield. That's because Sword and Shield is a traditional Pokemon game. So the way that all the other games are is typical Sword and Shield. But what I like about Sword and Shield, and my girlfriend, she never finished a Pokemon game before because she always eventually got lost, or she was like, okay, I don't know where to go now, and then she just left it. But in Sword and Shield, the game guides you a bit more. So when you open your map, it says you have to go now, go here, do this, go there, and it's way more immersive than the other Pokemon games. So yeah, if someone says I've never played a Pokemon game before, but I would like to try it, which one should I start with? I would say Sword and Shield instantly, or Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, because that's basically the first ever Pokemon game, but also like really easy, or yeah, also like tells you like go here or go there.
And what is your favorite game?
My favorite Pokemon game, that's kind of hard because um, every Pokemon game adds something different and has have some aspects on it that other Pokemon games don't have. So it's a very hard thing to answer for me. I think story-wise and maybe also like the feeling and with the memories I have, I would say Pokemon Diamond is my favorite. So the from what the remakes are gonna be about also. But in general, yeah, I would say Pokemon Sword maybe. Yeah. Or Pokemon Y. Pokemon X and Y were really good. That's the sixth generation Pokemon. So,
Okay, yeah.
so, there's no clear answer to that.
Well, um, thank you for being my guest because I have a more clearer insight of Pokemon, and I
You
think
should try it.
the listeners as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, sure. I always like to join your podcast. So if there's another subject I can talk about, let me know. And
yeah, and you let me know what you like too. I was
of
planning
course,
to, I am planning to do another Doctor Who episode with you and Jonathan, so that's gonna
oh
be fun.
yes, yeah, yeah, that would be really cool. And yeah, all I can say for people that are listening and never heard of Pokemon, you can join in into every kind of medium that you like. You can join in Pokemon cards, watch the anime, or play the games. Just find what fits you if you're interested, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, thank you again and talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
If you like this podcast, you can like and subscribe on all the platforms. You can also follow and comment on Podbean, Spotify, and Google Podcast. On social media, the Facebook group, the Discord server, and YouTube channel of Orenda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi, and on Twitter at OTFASP. Let me know what you think of this episode. In the next episode, we will talk about the inherited circle of Christopher Paolini. I am Orenda, and thank you for listening to Orenda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. See you next time.